Also, I realized that there's actually no point of me doing the la la like lip sync thing. That's what I used to do to sync audio before. There's no, you can just use any dialogue.
I mean,
It doesn't need
we
to be.
could still do la la. We can still
It's
we can
really
still
not
do
that important to me. I mean, it sounds like you want to do it.
Well, yeah. What if it's important to me? This is like
We can
this,
no.
this is,
That's
I'm a co-host.
we can do la. We can la la. We can.
Okay. Well, now I don't want to do it because now it's too professional. Now it's too.
Okay, nothing's ever good enough for this guy. Nothing's ever good enough.
Nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens. Hello, everybody.
We create our own
Welcome.
problems.
And now we're back to this. Now I can't open videos.
Sorry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Music Box, a show where I, Bimler, enjoyer of music, give an album to my friend Pyrine.
Imagine, if you will, you sit down to watch a YouTube video and you see a new episode of the Music Box pop up. You log in and you see that two men sitting down in a virtual world discussing music, thinking they know anything about anything, going on for at least upwards of 20 to 40 minutes, wasting your time. And you think to yourself, man, I should subscribe and hit that bell icon and like, because this is the shit I live for. Imagine that, if you will.
And after a week of listening, and whatever that was, we meet up and we talk about it. This week, we listened to Car Seat Headrest's Teens of Denial. I mentioned in the last episode that this is actually the second Car Seat Headrest album that I've shown you. One of the test episodes we did, I showed him the face-to-face version of Twin Fantasy, which was really cool, and he really liked it. This is personally my favorite Car Seat record. Teens of Denial is. So I was really excited to show this to Pyrine. And it seemed like he very much enjoyed it. It was their first record under their first original record under their label. Features a big step up in production from their previous records. Talks a lot about growing up without guidance, falling in with bad crowds, the influence drugs can have on a young person's life, religious themes, a whole litany of stuff thrown into this record. It means a lot to me. It's one of my favorite records of all time, and I want to know what you think. Sire.
I believe then, if you ask so politely, I can provide you with a smidgen of my opinion on this here album. I remember, it was very surprising when I was originally introduced to Car Seat Headrest to begin with. It wasn't from you, it was from a mutual friend. She on the show a few episodes back, who's Jordan. She ended up showing me one of these songs from Twin Fantasy, and I was very surprised, both of us, because I had never heard of it before. Never even like a thing. And you'd think I would have, because it's the kind of like music that's very much up, my alley. Car Seat Headrest has a lot of things. You might just call it the, if you're reductive but accurate, you could just call it the gay furry band. It's not wrong.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. I remember when we listened to the test episode of Twin Fantasy, I didn't super fuck with it at first. I thought it was just okay. But then I kind of went back with it and I really ended up enjoying it a lot more. Because I thought it did a lot of really interesting things that I hadn't really seen in music before. And Teens of Denial, I feel like, is almost like a step up from that. When I was listening to it, I was constantly comparing it back to Twin Fantasy as, the basis for me. Because I think we can consider that to be the baseline of Car Seat Headrest. And honestly, I was like, do I like this more? Do I like this rest? And I kind of, I'll hit you out of the gate. I think it is better than Twin Fantasy. And I like it for a lot more things. I like it for a lot more what it does. It does a very good job of bringing out and speaking about very poignant themes. And compared to Twin Fantasy, I connected with it a lot more. It struck a very noticeable chord with me. And I liked that.
No, I'm really glad to hear that. I know Jordan, mutual friend on the show a few episodes back, disagrees with both of us and thinks that Twin Fantasy is a better record. But I think it's a really interesting dichotomy between the two, because even though the version that we listened to and Teens of Denial came out 2 years apart, Twin Fantasy was one of the first things that Will Toledo wrote. It came out in 2011, the first version of it, and it was fairly different from the remastered version, and I think that does reflect in its songwriting. There are some moments where that record really shines. I mean, I love Twin Fantasy. I'm not shitting on it at all. That's a fantastic record. But you can definitely see the different styles of songwriting between the records, whereas Twin Fantasy is a lot messier and maybe more raw emotionally. Teens of Denial is more of a feat of storytelling, I think, and is, I think, more mature. And yeah, no, I'm glad you prefer it in that way and drew a big connection with that. What aspects did you... sorry, no, go on.
No, I was gonna say, I also think that Teens of Denial is also just a lot more consistent in quality. I think Twin Fantasy is great, but it also has some parts that I just don't care for as much. Like, it's kind of more of up and down. And Teens of Denial, I just think, has a higher baseline average. I would say the one thing that Twin Fantasy does better for me, I think, is that when it gets really into the instrumentation and the composition, I think that can end up being stronger. There are points in Twin Fantasy that I think shine brighter than parts in Teens of Denial. But overall, I think what really drew me in to Teens of Denial compared to Twin Fantasy was definitely the themes and the lyrics. The way that it is set up and the way that it goes over its like general ideas is so like it draws you in so like perfectly, because it's like simultaneously surface level and deep. You can like get what they say if you're just listening to it casually, but if you also take time to actually actively listen to it, there's a lot to chew on. I found myself like especially just copy pasting a lot of the lyrics because a lot of them are very, very fire. And to be honest, that's not usually how I like, engage music. Like, I think that you are not doing yourself a service if you are not sitting down listening to this album actively paying attention to the lyrics. There are some like musics you can listen to, some artists that definitely you just like, you turn them on, you vibe. I do think Car Seat Headrest definitely has vibes. Like, you would agree, right? They can get fucking hard with the instrumentation.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's nearly as... It would be half. It wouldn't even be like a quarter as good had it not been for the way they draw in and discuss their themes.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I kind of highlighted some of them at the start of this, but a lot of the themes on this record I very strongly connect with. And I'm glad you do too. But the way that it talks about them is very real. It definitely, you can tell it's not written from that perspective, as I think sometimes that can muddy the waters a lot of the time. Like, I feel like if somebody in that sort of naive, like teenage mindset wrote a lot of those feelings, they would come across maybe not as, I don't know, like it feels like this album has a lot of lessons in it rather than being an experience. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of waffling. I don't really know what I was going for.
It's like,
but
the whole idea is like, you're trying to basically convey the feelings a teenager might have, falling in with a bad group of people, engaging in drugs, dealing with family issues and trauma and stuff like that, and like almost translating that into a way that can be understood. Because it's like, when you're a teenager, you can't really process those thoughts because you're not developed enough. You haven't experienced enough of life to actually have a proper conception of even what you're going through. So it's like Will Toledo basically went back in his head and relived those moments and basically put those moments into words. And it's really powerful from that, because it's like, you probably went through the same thing like your time. Like, it's the thing where it's like, even if you can't directly relate to the idea of, falling with a bad crowd, you can pull some things out of it to, say, hey, that's kind of like something I went through. And this is like, this is exactly what it's like, and it's just that I haven't had words to it until this time. That's a really good thing that this entire album is good at. It's good at putting nebulous feelings into words. It does it really well. And like putting it like a phrase, like an idea into your head that just conveys such a very strong emotion. I'll kind of give an example, because I think that's not really well explained on my part, but like, you know what I mean, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I do. I definitely think one of these that I think the album actually does very well and very subtly is self-deprecation or self-loathing, which isn't at all the forefront of the record, but you can definitely tell, even from the first few lines on the record, that it kind of coats the whole thing and plays a large part in the decisions that the narrator, I suppose you could say, Joe, whatever, goes through on the record. Like, for example, in Fill in the Blank, the line, "If I was split in two, I would just take my fists so I could beat up the rest of me." Or in Vincent, the chorus, he's talking down about himself a lot. "Don't you know I'm not strong? Don't you know I'm not kind?" Or even like, just like screaming about how pathetic he thinks his past self was on Destroyed by Hippie Powers, or calling himself the scum of the earth on the, Drugs with Friends. Like, almost every track on the record, there's this layer of self-deprecation, I guess, for, like, lack of being able to come up with anything more creative to call it. And I really like how that's executed, because it doesn't draw your attention at all. And I think a lot of aspects of this record do that. And the religious things, too. Sometimes they're played off for jokes. Like the whole bit in Drugs with Friends where it's like, "And then I saw Jesus." Like, that's funny. But it's like, that plays a very central part in the album's narrative. I think that's really cool.
And it's also really good because it's not just independently, okay, we're singing about something, then we go into like a self-deprecating bit, it's tied into it. It's like more of like an underlying feeling you get going throughout a lot of the music rather than a main chorus, rather than a main like idea. It's almost like confusion, because when you're in that situation, like in real life, when you're actually in that kind of thing, those feelings don't like just happen on their own. You just don't start out like, "I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself." That is something that is layered on. That's something that just slowly drips in through layers of confusion, layers of like abuse, and layers of like all these events happening at once. Like, it's like a slow drip feed realization that I hate myself, I hate the situation I'm in, I hate the people that are around me, I'm not happy, and I've become so miserable, and I don't even know how I got here.
Yeah,
And
that's...
God.
It is really good. I mean, obviously, we could talk about how that all comes to a head on the behemoth of a track that is the Ballad of the Costa Concordia, but I don't want to get there yet, because that's my one of my favorite songs of all time. But like, even throughout the tracks before it, like Cosmic Hero, Drunk Drivers, Killer Whales, and Drugs with Friends, a lot of songs on the record, and the record as a whole, one of the big themes is like growing up without guidance, but it's more so the implications of parental neglect or abuse as well, especially when you tie in the religious theming of it. It's really interesting how much that is integral to every other issue on the record, right? Like romantic incompetence, or self-loathing, or drug use, or falling in with bad people, all can kind of be tied back to that, and I like how they explore it in a really cool way throughout the record. Cosmic Hero might be my favorite example besides Ballad, because of how the song is structured, and a lot of it does a lot of referencing to those religious things, like obviously the whole refrain of "I will go to heaven, you won't go to heaven," kind of like that sort of, it almost sounds like a tantrum. But as somebody who grew up religious, I can definitely like feel that. And more so when it comes to the parental side of things, though, the way the rest of the song is structured, where it's like, if you really want a blank, and then it gives like a really bad solution or like hurtful answer for most of them. Especially when it comes to the end of the track, I think it's most apparently from a more parental or authoritative perspective. If you don't come home tonight, you will never call it home again. If you want some peace and quiet, there's room for all in heaven. Is like, that's ow. And the way the whole song builds up to that is really great.
It gets kind of gross with how it pokes at you emotionally sometimes. It's like, why are you doing that, dude?
Yeah. Or another song from that, or another line from that pokes me in that way is, I know, and yes, I'm all right with death, but why do you talk about it so goddamn much? Very much like, yeah, of course I'm okay with it. Let's stop talking about it now. Let's move on to something else. Like, I don't know. I like lines like that. And the album does that kind of tongue-in-cheek thing a lot. Where it pokes at that sort of shallow security in things, I guess. And that's probably one of the big examples, but in other songs it does that as well. Like the whole Teens of Style thing in Drugs with Friends as well is like that.
Yeah, it also like conveys a very, very good sense of, I think, isolation and a desire for connection. I'll be honest, that's a big theme I always gravitate towards. Like themes of intimacy and connection are one things that I always will lock in on. I look at like Drunk Drivers, Killer Whales, that kind of thing, because it's almost like it's awareness of the fact that you're in a bad situation, that you're in this, but you just don't even know what to do. You're like, you've kind of been in that pit for so long that you have no idea how to even get out. And like, you're just kind of stuck in there. But at the same time, realizing that you're not the only one in this situation. Everyone else is. You know, we're not a proud race. It's not a race at all. We're just trying. It's like, it's a situation that I think a lot of us can relate to, where we all want to feel like we're belonging in the people around us, and we have that kind of connection to feel like we're understood, to feel like we're heard.
Yeah.
Something that's just completely natural. It's human. And that's something that can always very easily lead us astray, as long as, like, you know, if someone says the right things and does the right stuff and you don't know any better, if you're a teenager, for example, you can find yourself following them off a cliff, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you can even blame anyone for that. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this album is just about growing up. You have to learn that lesson. No one can teach it for you. No one can help you through it. Even like if you had, you know, parents there guiding you, which in this album, not really the case. But even if they were, that's just the case of things. You have to go through that. You have to figure that out. Because it's just the part of life. And that's something I really like. It keeps going into that. It's like an awareness that you are in this situation, and that, not that it's okay, but that's like natural. That's just the way like things happen. That's the way you feel. And it's okay to recognize that, to understand you have that feeling. Because that's the first step of like doing anything, is recognizing how you feel. That's that's another big thing on this album. Toledo talks about, you know, being confused a lot as a teenager and not knowing what the hell you are or what the hell you're supposed to do, and seeing yourself like change from a stupid little child into a stupid, cynical little adult. But now I'm waffling, so I apologize.
No.
I think I
How dare you ramble about music on the music podcast? See,
You're
now
right.
I get to say it. No. I mean, there is definitely, I mean, like I said, this album is very much like, you can almost experience it linearly. You can almost, shut up. It's mean.
Sorry.
You can experience it linearly on this. Is that even a word? We're not dwelling on this. On this record, you can experience it as the record progresses. A sort of maturity, a sort of growing. And I feel like, I mean, that's another reason I like the track on the track Cosmic Hero, as it very much kind of feels like the unraveling before the unraveling, which makes absolutely no sense now that I'm saying it out loud. But Cosmic Hero is kind of all of the ick from the record prior, building up to a climax before we hit the Ballad of Costa Concordia, which is when everything boils over. At least that's how I view it. But even if you go all the way back to like Fill in the Blank, or Vincent, or Destroy Baby Powers, those tracks feel very immature, very brash, very yelly, very shouty. Not just sonically, but also just tonally. It very much just feels angry, get mad, get rebellious, without any sort of like real weight to it. And then once you start to progress further in the record, with songs like Not What I Needed, kind of draws a middle ground and points out some of the flaws in its own logic. Like the whole good people give good advice, like that bit. And then you have, and Drunk Drivers Killer Whales is definitely a turning point as well. State Park tackles a lot of that. Unforgiving Girl is kind of an exception, as I think that song's just kind of fun. It doesn't really fit in with a lot of the themes of the record. But you could also very much see it as, thematically, love being a way that somebody finds more out about life and the world, which I think is kind of a cute way to look at that song. But all that, you can definitely feel a tonal, gradual shift as the record goes from being more fun and brash and angry to more reserved and cynical. And that comes to a massive head on the Ballad of the Costa Concordia, which I think I'm finally ready to talk about because that track, holy shit. Oh, is easily my favorite on the record and one of my favorites of all time.
I mean,
I want you to talk about it first.
are you ready for it? Because I still have other general things to say, but that's to me like the climax. Like, I'll say this right now. Even if you aren't going to listen to the entire album, even if you aren't going to try, like, you know, sit down and listen to it, you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't sit down and just listen to the Ballad of Costa Concordia in general. It, to me, not only is the best song on the entire record, not only as I think the best Car Seat Headrest soundtrack song I've listened to so far, it is something you have to experience yourself to actually understand it, because we would not be able to convey how good it is just by talking about it. You have to just listen to it yourself. That's the only thing I can say.
Honestly, that's fair. I mean, I definitely think it is like one of those songs that everybody should hear, especially if you are late teenage or early 20s and you're still very much in that sort of familial spot where that's very much your life. Listen to this song. But in terms of getting into why I think it's so great, and why I connect with it so much, the song very much is, like I said before, it is the kind of boiling over of everything. It's named after the Costa Concordia, very expensive ship accident that was horribly mishandled, and it cost $300 million to, you know, pay for the repairs and all that. So it's kind of like the Titanic. But the reason it's called that is it's kind of comparing a inevitable failure in life to that accident, which wasn't necessarily like Will Toledo, singer guy, who plays the character of Joe in this record, isn't necessarily blaming himself. More so saying like, I mean, it is my fault. I can't really just apologize, but at the same time, how was I supposed to know? Is like the big question of the song. In the best spoken word passage on any song I've ever heard, he begins to spiral into asking questions of things like, how was I supposed to know how to drive a van? How was I supposed to know how to get my bag after I play basketball? How was I supposed to know how to not get drunk all the fucking time? How was I supposed to know? And like, he kind of puts it to a head when he says, how was I supposed to steer this ship? Which is basically him metaphorically saying, how the hell was I supposed to navigate a life? I was never given the tools or the advice necessary to do this, and I've been left on my own, you know?
Yeah,
like,
don't listen to that part of the song if you're driving, by the way.
Oh, don't. No. Your speedometer will just start going up. You won't even be pressing down on the pedal. The car will just naturally start doing that.
The large oak tree, you're like locking on, like, bing, you turning off the road, people diving out of the way.
No, it is literally that, because it is a spiral. Like I said, it's the boiling over. Everything is finally flowing over, and it's when he finally starts to say like, and I like this metaphor as well, because it also doesn't completely and when I talk about this, I'm talking about it in a hindsight or more mature way. It's not basically saying "fuck parents, y'all." That's not the point of the track. It never really was. It even acknowledges the quote being, "My horse broke its back to get me here," which to me basically means like, yeah, there was effort put into bringing me up as a person, whether that be like financially or societally. But despite that, I'm here now, and I have no way to do anything. No way or reason to navigate. I've not been given the right things. I've just been brought here. And now you can't say you're sorry and it's over, because this is my life now. And it's so fucking real. It hurts so bad hearing that song sometimes. And the way he ends that bridge, just screaming, "I give up," is so, like, wild. And then the track just explodes.
Gross, dude.
It's gross. Its ending. It's gross. I love the song so much. It's the highlight of this record. I mean, this record's great. I don't think there's a bad song on it. Like I said, it's one of my favorite records of all time, and I'm going to give it a very high score at the end of this video. But the ballad is easily my favorite song on it, and just kind of really ties together everything about the record, what makes it so great, puts it to a head, and lets it all out. And the way it kind of ends, and it also goes into Connect the Dots, the track afterwards, it very much kind of feels like deciding, you know what, like, it's awful that it has to be this way, but I need to do this growing up myself. It's about damn time I do. And that has to start with me making changes. I have to cut off some of the negative influences in my life, hence the fuck off teens at the end of Connect the Dots. And it very much feels like a sort of breaking point where one is taking life into their own hands. It kind of feels like, I'm sorry if I'm talking for too long, but to me, it kind of feels like the ending of Whiplash, if you've seen that movie, where it's like the saddest happy ending ever. Where it's like, yes, this person has finally snapped and is making progress in their life, but it's not a good thing that this had happened. It's not a healthy solution to this problem. They were still very much damaged by that lack of support. Similar to how in I'm not going to spoil Whiplash too much, but the ending is very similar to that. Maybe a bit darker, admittedly, in Whiplash, but I get a similar feeling in my stomach finishing Teens of Denial. But I don't know if that's just me. What do you think?
What do I think? You've just been talking for like 7 minutes. I was just listening.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I was just listening because I was interested. No, I'll say, when I was writing my notes for this, for the Battle of Costa Concordia, I really only wrote one note. It said, this song is kind of fucked up. For context, a lot of my notes can be very, very long for songs, upwards of like a page or two, because I like to be thorough, even if I don't end up mentioning a lot of it. I like absorbing it that way. It helps me do that. I think it's one of those things where it's a song that is very personal to each person, but conveys like a general theme. If I were to talk about it, it would most likely be in my view, it would be my like experience with that situation, but it's all tied together in like the fact that growing up, you have to make mistakes. And I'll just be honest, it's gonna be a bit maybe a bit cruel for me to say this, but you have to suffer. You have to experience bad things in your life.
Suffering builds character. Okay, we get it. Yeah, whatever.
But it's literally true. It's true. Like, I will maintain and I will defend that fact. You can't have known what to have done. There is no way. Because that's just a part of it. You have to crash in order to learn how to drive. You have to figure that out. You can't live your life without making any mistakes.
I've not made a mistake while driving.
Okay, look at this guy. We got a NASCAR driver over here. Listen.
You can't admit that you're weak. I think that's it. I'm better than you.
To answer just that basic question, you couldn't have known. Like, there's no possible way. And what I like about Connect the Dots is, to me, that feels like realizing that and just shedding the weight of that expectation. You can't erase what you've gone through in the past. You can't, like, undo the mistakes that you've made. You're still gonna, like, wake up at night realizing you've made those mistakes. You can't make yourself perfect. That's the thing. Is that in your life, and like you living out your life, you should always try and aspire, to me, to be the best you can and to be like, to always work through your troubles and always try and keep pushing forward. But that doesn't mean you're ever going to be perfect. That doesn't always mean you're going to be like at your 100% of life. That doesn't mean you're ever going to have it all figured out. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. That doesn't mean you shouldn't always push towards that point. That doesn't mean you shouldn't like make the effort. And to me, like, Connect the Dots is shedding that weight. It is realizing that, shedding the weight of the past and just releasing yourself, jumping forward, and actually moving. Even if those things happened, you're still here. You're still on the path forwards. You haven't stopped. You need to stop looking down at your feet. You need to stop looking behind you and lamenting at where you've been and realize that you can still walk forward. Yeah. And you are not walking on that path alone. Everyone is on that path. And that, to me, even if it's not a perfect ending, I like it because it feels liberating. It is a very liberating thing for me.
No, I mean, I agree. Sorry, I might have interrupted you a little bit, but I don't want it to be misconstrued that I think the album has a sad ending. I think it has a very, like I said, it's a happy ending in a similar way that Whiplash is a happy ending. Like, oh yeah, good job, Neiman. He did the thing that he wanted to do. At what cost? Which you could very much ask a similar question with Tea to Denial. I don't think it's as great of a cost. I still think it affected him and will make his life more challenging. I still think it makes him a very cynical person. As the full closing track on the record, Joe Goes to School, kind of outlines, in my opinion, that he still has that kind of cynicism, that kind of that hurt. But I do think Connect the Dots is a very euphoric song and is meant to be as a sort of shedding of that and moving forward and looking to the future and kicking ass despite what you've been through. So yeah, big ups, good job.
Thanks. I do feel bad because I know a lot of people in my life, I especially because I was talking to my uncle about this, and he's like, yeah, I don't really know if I think I'm just kind of like at a dead end in my life. I don't really know if there's anything else I can do. Like, I can't change, like things are just happening. He's like, no. My uncle's pretty old. He's like in his 50s. I don't think there's ever a point in your life that you can stop and you can look back and you can change and you can be like the better. Because as long as you can make choices and as long as you can keep doing things of your own volition, you can make that change. It's just about, understanding yourself. Anyone can say that to you, but until you absorb that yourself, that's when it actually sets in. This is the kind of thing. I mentioned this. I had like a few talking points I wrote down on this. It's a very emotionally connecting album, and I realize it's gonna sound a bit strange for me to say this. Gay music tends to do that. It does that, especially to me. Unsurprisingly, as a homosexual male, as a guy who likes guys, of course it will, but hear me out. That kind of underlying tone, that kind of, theme, again, it doesn't have to be just like homosexuality. The entire, LGBT whole thing tends to be very personal. It tends to be very self-explorative. It tends to be understanding oneself and understanding one's feelings. So when that comes into music, it obviously bleeds through and boils over. It's a lot of circumstance, it's a lot of realizing life around you, and it could be a lot more personal for that aspect. I think a lot of it does that. Car Seat Headrest is perfect example of that, but there's other fucking artists I've listened to that do the exact same thing, and I think that's very interesting. I think it's very interesting to me, at least personally, the way that a lot of these themes, even if you aren't identifying yourself in that kind of manner, which no shame at all.
No shame if you're straight. We get it. You're weird. Just
we get it. We get it. We'll only have you flogged for a few minutes, by the street. We'll be fine. I'm joking. My point is that you can still find a way to relate to it because it's something that a lot of people can, emphasize with, even if you don't, have those feelings, have those thoughts exactly. There's still a lot of universal experiences about that, and I think that's really nice. I think it's very personal in a way that a lot of music isn't always. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely true. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily fair to classify it in that regard, but I can definitely see the case you're making, especially with Car Seat Headrest, as that's a theme that they explore very deeply. Not on this record, but on a lot of records like Twin Fantasy, How to Leave Town, Monomania, My Back is Killing Me, Baby. Do they explode on Mad Low? I don't know. This is not important. They do it a lot. But yeah, I mean, emotional music, good. I like connecting with things. I concur. I know I have a way with words. I know. I'm really loquacious. Wow. See, that's a good word. Loquacious. I got all loquacious in your mom last night.
What the fuck, dude?
I busted out the thesaurus.
What's the...
I just got all loquacious.
Bro's getting fucking antediluvian. No. I'll say in terms of connecting to music. I was thinking about this. I was literally thinking about this today. Back on my car ride home from my classes today. I was like, when it comes to connecting with music, I think there's 3 stages. Good music, I think, sings to you. It's something that you can listen to and you can enjoy and you can all right, that's pretty nice. But that's all it kind of really does. Great music resonates with you. You feel it on a level that's very personal to you. You can feel it striking a chord to you. You can feel it almost more than just actively, or no, not actively, passively listening to it. That's the word I want to use. But I think amazing music howls to you. Because to me, that is something that goes beyond words. That is something that slices through these walls you create, these things you have in place, these thoughts, your ego, your personality, all of that straight to you, piercing through like a fucking howl at night. That to me is very, very rare when music howls to me. But when that happens, that shit is life-changing. You will be on the floor sobbing. You will feel like every single part of you has shattered. I think Teens of Denial resonates with me. I think the reason it doesn't howl to me is specifically because I don't relate to all the themes. I relate to a good few of them, and I can take, and I can emphasize and I can take what I can out of them, but not all of them. For one, I did not engage in many, we'll say substances during high school. I didn't partake in any because most people in my high school didn't do that. I lived in a very good boy group. My group, my circle was very, very, nice. They didn't really, okay, not nice, but they were very clean in that regard. But falling in with a bad group, I can, because I can definitely tell you, don't really care for all the friends I had in high school. They were not all the best people. And looking back at them, I'm like, why did I hang out with them? It really, which song was it? I think it was... yeah, Destroyed by Hippie Powers. There's a line, that guy I kinda hate is here. It's kind of like a situation.
I think of a specific individual. I used to think of a very specific individual when I heard that line from high school.
It kind of just is the case. High school's kind of funny. You just got to take what you can get. You don't get to really choose who you're around. It's just circumstance. And with that person, you're just like, I do not like you, but I have to deal with you, walks in. You kind of got to take it. But I'm kind of getting off topic. My point is that I don't resonate with all the themes. Not that I think are bad. Just not all of them really hit me. And I think if they all did, then this would be like a 10 out of 10 howling album for me. It just doesn't. And that's why I don't think, out of all the albums I've listened to, it is, one that I consider to be, life-changing. But it is one that I think did strike quite a chord with me that I really appreciated. It was very emotional. I connected with it. Like you said, we can be loquacious. We could be antediluvian. We could be photosynthetic.
So true. We can be
la-la.
La-la. I don't know. This album is a howler for me. I don't like that we're using that term, but we're using that term. Because I would wager that I think we can connect on a lot of the same themes, but I can also connect on a few more. As I think, maybe not the kind of substances that they were using on this record, but I was very much an oddball in my high school group. It's the one kid who didn't smoke pot, basically, just to kind of rip the Band-Aid off. And that was kind of a big point of insecurity for me, as it was a very complex situation, and I was very frequently engaging with that sort of culture, which definitely makes that part of the album speak to me a little bit. Also, the religious thing. Truthfully, I don't know entirely where you stand on that, but I kind of referenced it earlier in this video. I was raised in a religious household. I don't really align with those ideals, but they've had a massive and lasting impact on my life and who I am as a person, whether I like it or not. And that part of the album very much resonated with me. So yeah, this album is a very me album. It's something that resonates with me very deeply. It's a core part of my personality and understanding who I am as a person. And even apart from that, I think it's just fantastic. As a record, it's musically great, has a fantastic sound. It very much sounds like that garage rocky, indie rocky, the Strokes kind of sound. Very upbeat, very fun, great progressions. The vocals are awesome. Will does a really interesting vocal candor, and I think it does wonders on this record, especially when he gets loud. Really,
I have something to say on that.
yeah.
Okay. Now, what I'm about to say is going to be what I believe to be the biggest blasphemy I could say about Car Seat Headrest as a community. I believe if I were to say this at a concert, they would drag me out in the streets and flame me alive. But it is something that I cannot deny, even if it has grown on me, and even if now I think I can mostly accept it. I do not care for Will Toledo's vocal performance.
Dang.
I do not care for it. I don't care for it. I specifically thought this when they brought in Ethan Ives for that like little bit he did, and I just couldn't help but think I would prefer Ethan. Like, I would just straight up prefer him. And I think the reason that is just because Will Toledo has to his voice, to me, the way he does it, just a whine to it that I can't get over. It's kind of whiny, and I can appreciate whiny lyrics, like vocalizations sometimes if it's done right. And I'm not to hate like Will Toledo's voice like at all. I don't think he like has a bad one. It's just, to me, it's not one I care for. It's not one I care for. And I think I would enjoy a lot of Car Seat Headrest songs more if it was just straight up someone else singing. That no other way I can say it.
Well, okay. For clarification, I will be dragging him into an alley and bludgeoning him with a trash bag after this. But
sorry, what if his
get it.
goons just grab me from behind?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's definitely like an acquired vocal style, but I personally sent a lot of growing on me. Maybe I'm just desensitized, as I've heard some whiny ass vocals. Looking at you, Weezer. But like, he very much has this sort of a very unique tone. So I get it being. I remember I showed Car Seat to my parents, and they said the same thing. They're like, I just don't really like his voice, and I was like, that's fair. But I definitely think it is interesting, and it has grown on me. I didn't like it at first either. But I think it adds to the record a lot as well. I think it's very earnest. And like I said, when it gets loud too, it's a very, I don't know, it's a very emotional voice. I mean, I guess whiny, that kind of makes sense. It's like the same, two sides of the same coin, but, I don't know. I definitely think Teens of Denial is one of, if not his best vocal performances as well, just as far as he as a singer goes. But I'm kind of getting sidetracked. All this to say, I think the record's very good. I think the record's very great. I think the record's amazing. Like I've said many times with this video, it is one of my favorite albums. And in fact, hold on, let me think. Out of all the records we reviewed so far, it's my favorite. Which I don't think you agree with, and I understand why.
No.
No, I know you don't.
I don't.
It's close. I would give this album a 97.
A 97? Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. That's a high grade. That's a high grade. I think that's the highest. Yeah, that's the highest you've given so far.
Really? That's crazy.
Wow.
Who would have said that? Who would have said this is my favorite so far? That's a little Easter egg for you hunters out there who are paying attention.
You're hunters. All right, guys, we're gonna be dropping off the secret music box treasure box at a latitude and longitude equal to all of Bimler's ratings for all the music we've done so far. So make sure to watch back and look at all of us. No. We're about to wrap it up here. So I'll say I did something a little bit different for my rating this time because I went through each song and I gave them an individual grade and I averaged them all out. I will say my favorites. I'll go through them real quick. I think the highest ones were definitely going to be which ones were it? It was where is it? Not What I Needed. That was a 92. Drunk Drivers Killer Whales, also a 92. Let's
my leg
see.
Cracked.
Ouch. Connect the Dots, that was a 93. Then Ballad of Costa Concordia, that was a 95. Everything else was kind of in the 80s range. And all of it averaged together, 89 out of 100. I would say an 89.
Damn,
and I think that's pretty fair. I would agree with that. I don't agree. Everything. I don't give everything an A. A B is only
nothing ever
just a passing normal average grade.
Nothing.
Dang. In the American education system.
Happens. Next week, we're listening to this album right here. I made an announcement post on my Discord server, and I might have said it in the last episode. This is the next Radiohead album, baby. We're doing alternating weeks every other week. We're doing a Radiohead record. Next week, it's OK Computer. Very excited for this one. You know how I said that up until this point, Teens of Denial is the favorite one that we reviewed? It will immediately be usurped by OK Computer. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited to show it to you guys, or to Pyrine, and then talk about it with you guys. But yeah, we will see you next week. If you've heard Teens of Denial, let us know in the comments what you think of it.
And like and subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Okay.
Do that too.
Yeah, we can do that, I guess.
We got a
Bye-bye.
show.
Adios. See ya. Don't you dare. Keep it together, man. No. Why? We can't go one episode.
Why do you hate
I know. I
I just do it. I just
I
come on
don't
this
hate
show
it. No.